Hello, everybody. Happy Hump Day. It's Dave Neal, stand-up comic and host of Bachelor Nation News. We have Nate Mitchell making a post-show statement and some more hints that he may be the next Bachelor. We're going to share what he said, and we have some other information coming to light. We're going to get into all that. Follow me on Instagram at DNeals. Hey, quick question. Anyone live in Ontario, California, and would come to a stand-up show tomorrow, Thursday night? Let me know. If enough people want to come to a show, I'll go do the show, but otherwise I'm not going to drive out there for it. Ontario, California, DM me on Instagram at DNeals and let me know if you would come to a show tomorrow night at the... Anyway, let me know. Patreon.com/Dave Neal if you guys want behind-the-scenes bonus content. We'll be going live today. Scheduled time change will be different today, so go on Patreon to see that. I might be going live a little early today. All right, well, before we get into the Nate's statement, we've got the daily teacher recognition that we've been doing. We've been sharing Amazon wish lists, and we have Mrs. Finder says, "Hey Dave, I've really enjoyed watching and listening to you the last year or so. I'm a second grade teacher in small town Kansas. I saw you're adding I saw you've added other teachers lists and want to shoot my shot. Well, shoot your shot you shall. And here is Mrs. Finder's classroom supply list. They've got a writing tablet with a doodle board. Come on, that looks like a ton of fun. If anyone wants to purchase any of these items, it goes directly to Mrs. Finder's address, and you can help her out. She teaches kids with dyslexia and has other second and I think third grade EL, technology, art, social studies, science, and she says she creates a classroom, a place where students can thrive academically, socially, mentally, emotionally, and physically. So if you're always like, I love to donate, but I just don't know where the money's going, directly to the teachers, directly to Kansas. Where are my Kansas people out? So there'll be a link in the description pinned to this video. Go check that out. All right, here's Nate, and here is his story. I cannot express enough how grateful I am to have shared this experience with you, Gabby. You are truly an amazing person, both inside and out. From seeing you light up every room you inhabit to the convos that would bring us both to tears, there is not a moment spent with you that I would take back. I am forever going to be in your corner, and I pray that you find the person that loves you how you deserve to be loved. I strive to become a better person each and every day. My journey continues. Hashtag Team Gabby. And then he got heart comments. Nate for Bachelor. Bachelor Rabbit Hole. Love watching you. Hashtag Team Gabby. All right. So people are saying, will he be the next Bachelor? Could it be Nate as the next Bachelor? There he is, doing his dang thing. Okay, well, we don't know. That's the statement. Obviously, it doesn't address the situation that's been brewing with him. We're going to continue this part of the story. You might be annoyed by the story, but it's very fascinating to me from a journalistic point of view. I know people are on the fence. Nate was exposed by a lady named Kelsey via Reality Steve's platform as dating her for a year and a half without ever letting her know that he had a kid. We've gone over the whole story. He's apparently apologized for it on Men Tell All. We're going to listen to that in a few weeks when that episode airs. In the meantime, Reality Steve, who of course started the story, was criticized by Bachelor Party, and he, which is a podcast on The Ringer, he responds here with a sort of line item by line item response to their criticism. Only fair as we share this story. By the way, I cut my finger. Can you see that? Really slowing me down on my old thumbnail game here. He shares his side of the story. Let me start from the end where you can hear how heated it gets, and then we'll go back to where he starts.
Last couple days, I was like, I'm just so disappointed. This is irresponsible. It's ignorant. It's reckless, and it's uninformed.
All right, so that's what he has to say regarding Juliet Littman's podcast and her take on the Bachelor Party podcast. So let's go back to 8:50 mark to the beginning of his sort of line item response to what they considered in some ways that they basically implied that he's got a racial bias against people of color, which of course, is an interesting take to make, one of which, shouldn't be held lightly, but at the same time, he's got the right to respond because for, the Bachelor world, it's a pretty heavy allegation.
That's precise, but there's a lot to go over here. And the reason why I finally decided to do this was because Emma Gray, who was a guest on the Bachelor Party podcast. It's hosted by Juliette Littman.
By the way, he says, the reason I finally decided to do this, I'm all in support. Like, if you feel like someone's mischaracterized you, Reality Steve's got his own platform. Use your platform. Defend yourself. Because we just can't be living in a world where everyone just accuses everyone's reporting to be of racial bias without any sort of proof. At least bring, like, the if you're going to, like, fire such a heavy shot, bring the evidence with it.
Emma has her own podcast with Claire Fallon, two women that have been on my podcast, I believe 2 or 3 times in the past. They haven't been on in a while. Their PR person asked for them to come on. I said, yeah, I'd love to, but I don't think they want to. And then the PR person went back to them, and I haven't heard from the PR person since. So they already have questions about dealing with me, I guess. I don't know. I just know that their PR person reached out to me, asking me if I wanted them on the pod, and I said yes. And I said, but are you sure? Because I had heard things that Emma and Claire weren't big fans of me after everything went down last year. And then they were like, oh, let me check. And I haven't heard from them. So I guess I got my answer. Anyway, the reason of so let's just get started. I have the quotes. This is going to be kind of Dave Neal-ish, except I don't give the actual audio clips. I'm just going to read the quotes because I had to write them down. This is the way I roll. Dave does it with audio, which is great. I'm just going to take some of the quotes that I just thought were absolutely ridiculous. So within the first 3 minutes of the podcast, host Juliette Littman said that I had been teasing I had dirt on one of the contestants. And she said, quote, and she did it in like my voice. She said, this is what Reality Steve said. I told you I wasn't going to do this anymore. I said I was going to back off, but I felt like people just had to know this. And the way she, end quote, and the way she said it was very condescending, and it was making it seem like I was on the brink of exploding if I didn't release this, which couldn't have been further from the truth. I laid out exactly how this story went. I literally did nothing about it for 3 months, and I didn't even believe it when I got it, and didn't touch it for 3 months. It's just, again. But you got to understand something. That's the first thing that she led with.
Yeah, so I made the same points. And for anyone wondering, I don't converse with Reality Steve before making my videos. I watch content and respond to it like a normal human. I think that's why a lot of people relate to it. So when I watch, I go, I can't believe they're already getting this wrong the first minute into their video. This being people that are accusing Reality Steve of poor journalism. So they're sort of conflating of what he does at the beginning set the tone for what I just believe to be pretty bad faith. So I'm going to skip it along. Of course, I always recommend you guys go check out the full conversation. So definitely go to realitysteve.com and check out the full podcast here. But just for the sake of time, we're going to skip through to a couple moments.
About this, first off, is an opinion that was flat out wrong because, as I just explained. But here's the interesting thing. Pretty much every single sports podcast that I listen to is on The Ringer, who Juliette works for, mostly by her boss, Bill Simmons. I listen to him with Ryan Russillo every Sunday night during basketball season. I listen to him and Cousin Sal. I listen to Fairway Rollin'. I listen to the amount of Ringer podcasts. I listen to a lot of the rewatchables if it's movies that I like.
Yeah, the point is that this podcast is not just some random podcast. The Ringer's a large network.
Absolutely 100% known for being a guy that says, I can't stand the aggregators, because he hates it when people listen to a podcast and take one quote of that podcast and then turn it into a sports story.
Okay, so what he's saying is Bill Simmons, the creator of the Ringer podcast, doesn't like it when people do what they ended up doing, which was not share the full. And that's the thing. Here's the thing with podcasting. You have unlimited bandwidth. You have unlimited bandwidth to get the story right. So they could have dug deeper into what exactly was going on versus conflate things. It's like, this isn't evening news where you have 30 seconds. You have as much time in the world as you want. I'm not kidding when I say I've listened to 7-hour-long podcasts before on long road trips where it's people like squashing beef, because sometimes you need to pull out a lot of receipts, and podcasting is like the community's like way of going to the court, right? It's like, who's right, who's wrong. Now, you could argue against the ethics of all of what Reality Steve does in the first place, which you could argue against the ethics of what I do. You could say, oh boy, let the show play out. You're stoking whatever. But Reality Steve provides a platform where people can discuss the show in in day-to-day ways that never existed before. He's the first one who kind of did, and again, not to sound like I'm pimping for Reality Steve here, but I've said this before. I think it would be a fascinating feature film if you wanted to overly dramatize what Reality Steve does, because he was the first one to kind of like start sharing his thoughts about the show, with his friends, and that became a blog and people started watching. It's like it was very organically built. So there is a market for what he does, but you could argue that when you do something like what Reality Steve does or what I do or anyone who does commentary, that it adds it gives the fan base a reason to hate watch somebody or this or that. But that's really on the fan base. He's just giving you the information.
2 or 3 days? Hell, Tasha was defending the guy on podcasts. So I don't understand.
Okay, so I'm not going to play the part where he discusses Easy because it was a sexual assault case, and we don't want to get into it. But Reality Steve had given the story to the lady who's been criticizing him, and they ran it in Huffington Post because Reality Steve wanted it to be handled by them, by women, by pros. So he didn't jump into that story, and I guess that they've had a working relationship before.
How that's my fault that this story got out there.
And then they criticized and said, well, we made this Easy story. No one even cared to watch the Easy story. Yet at the same time, people care about this story. And he's saying, hey, I present a story. It's up to the audience if they run wild with it.
And I guess maybe their point is, well, you shouldn't have put it out there in the first place. It's like, look, again, we're going in a circle here. But that's reeked of jealousy to me. And it reeked of, we had a great story that we did great reporting on and barely anybody talked about it. Reality Steve's throw out a story about a guy who had 2 girlfriends at one time a year ago, and everyone's covering it. You can't, why is that my fault? Honestly. Also in the podcast, they said, is Reality Steve the right vessel for information like this? Is he the right person to go to share a story like this? Again, I guess I was, because Kelsey and Laree felt like they could come to me with this.
Yeah, I mean, they brought the story to him. This would be like if you do CPR to somebody. Well, is that the right guy to do CPR? I don't know. The person was choking. They asked me for CPR. Now, okay, that's obviously an exaggerated point, but yeah, they came to him. He's got a platform. So it wasn't like he was chosen amongst, that like they trusted him. Maybe, what else can you say there?
Look at Steve's history with people of color from this franchise, and they threw out 3 names: Nate, Tasha, and Matt James.
All right, I'm going to play that again. This is really the big crime that doesn't come with any sort of receipts. They basically accuse him of having a racial bias against black people.
Somebody else, don't even know who it was, brought up a point that, look at Steve's history with people of color from this franchise, and they threw out 3 names: Nate, Tasha, and Matt James. Well, if you did any homework, those happen to be 3 people that I did bring stuff up against and did tell a story. However, in those 3 particular instances, I actually did not do anything like myself. Do you not remember those stories? Of course you don't, because you didn't follow anything that I did. It's just like, oh, Steve's talking shit about Tasha. Oh, Steve's talking shit about Matt James. No, what I did was I had other people come on and discuss their situation with those people.
And when you do bring up those 3 contestants, he goes, well, clearly these ladies must have a point. But then you think of all the white people that Steve's also talked about, which he'll mention. I mean, it's pretty much, if anything's happening, I don't think he's holding on to any stories for any reason. This is his business. This is his livelihood. He's done a better job, as he has said, of committing to not sharing salacious information if people don't want to put their name or face behind it. He's got the last 15 or so months where he hasn't released any of these stories without someone's name or face behind it. Like he said, he held on to this one for 3 months until the person wanted to come forward. But the point is that, he's pretty fairly spreading the stories to the far reaches of Bachelor Nation. If you're a person in Bachelor Nation that gets clicks and something happens, he's going to report on it, regardless of skin color, age, sex, regardless of all that.
Nate, Kelsey, and Laree. Tasha had her ex-husband on the podcast. Whether you liked him or not, he was the one that came on and talked about his relationship with her.
Which probably made Tasha actually look better.
Who did I bring on?
Not James, Grace.
Grace, down in South Florida. The girl that he was hitting on before he knew Rachel was coming to visit him in New York 2 days later. So in those 3 instances where they say, I have a problem with people of color, I actually did let other people tell that story that were involved. The one thing that you guys all want, which is, hey, we want some proof, we want some evidence. Well, how about the guy that was married to Tayshia for 3 years? You might not like what he said, but it's not like I said, hey, I spoke to Tayshia's ex-husband, here's what he said, and I just rambled off and went off on Tayshia.
So it's almost like if they don't think Reality Steve is the right vessel for it, should he close up shop? Should he stop doing what he does? Because he's kind of the biggest independent voice in the Bachelor world, so he gets these types of stories.
Not what happened. He spoke. Matt James, same thing. Here's Grace.
By the way, and he's not allowed, Reality Steve's not allowed to have Bachelor-sanctioned interviews. I'm not. There's a lot of podcasts that aren't. I have people all the time, Dave, I'd love to come talk to you. I'd love to come on your show because people know we're going to have a good conversation. They know I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and all of that. And I say, all right, ask. But, Clayton has been denied. People on this season have been denied. Former leads have been denied. I'm not getting those interviews. I'm not bitter about it. They're just under a contract where they have to ask permission, and maybe the show doesn't trust that I'm going to stick to the company line. And of course I'm not. They don't pay my bills.
He came to me, said, this is what Matt did. I want to speak. She asked me, can I come on your live? We went over that. And then with Nate, you have Tayshia. You have Kelsey and Larry. So to just pinpoint it at that, it's just like, okay, yeah, those 3 are people of color that I had stories against. 1, those stories were told by other people. And 2, what are we keeping a running tally here? If I go after somebody black versus somebody white? How about when I went after Ari? How about when I went after Jenna? How about when I went after other people in the franchise? Pretty much way more white people I've had stories against than not have been white. So if we're keeping a tally, I'm sorry, the white contestants have been killed by me, and I've done more bad reporting or negative reporting on white contestation. I don't know what else to tell you. That basically broke down every single point that I kept saying over the last couple days. I was like, I'm just so disappointed. This is irresponsible. It's ignorant. It's reckless. And it's uninformed.
All right, so he said he wouldn't go on their podcast unless it's to apologize because he stated his points. As we've been covering this story, I think it's only fair that I bring you guys as much audio of each side of this conversation. We shared everything that Juliette Littman said on the Bachelor Party podcast and in the Love to See It podcast, and now we've shared Reality Steve's response. There will be some people saying, why are we dragging this story out? And I say, hold on, folks. I have unlimited bandwidth over here. You know I'm going to make 4 videos today, and we're going to continue covering this story because I'm assuming Reality Steve and others don't want to cancel Nate. He's going to address it on the Men Tell All, and maybe on his journey, if he does become the Bachelor, he'll use that experience to look within and unpack why he's acting a certain way and overcoming whatever his toxic traits are, as we all do. I have no judgment and no shame whatsoever. I think we need to really lean from that point of view as remind ourselves that we are not better than others, morally speaking. We're all trying the best with the info we have, and whatever his destructive divorce did, it created a mess and some collateral damage, and that's his story to tell. He's already said it, but we're going to hear it come from his mouth at the Men Tell All. Let me know what you guys think, and I've got more content coming your way today. Link in the description to the Amazon wish list if you want to help out a teacher in need. Also, I'll be on Instagram at DNeals. Let me know if you're in Ontario, California, and want to come to a stand-up show tomorrow, live on Patreon at patreon.com/Dave Neal. Talk to you soon. Oh, by the way, go to realitysteve.com to check out the full audio. He's doing daily roundups, pretty good coverage, and we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.